The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the speaker's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of a Master's Journey Foundation. The material and information presented here is for general information purposes only. A Master's Journey Foundation's name and all forms and abbreviations are the property of its owner, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service.
Good afternoon. I'm Ruth Whistler with the Master's Journey Foundation, bringing you today episode number 2 of our interviews with social workers who were social work students and now are social work professionals. Very excited to be talking to you about it. I'm hoping that you'll hear some good things that will help you on your journey as these people talk about theirs. My guest today is Karina Lupian, and she is going to talk to us about what it was like. So welcome, Karina. I'm so happy to have you here. It's a wonderful thing. Thanks for taking your time and energy, everything you do with the foundation and everything you've done to get where you are and who you are at this point. Which is going to take me right to the first question. Who are you now and how did you get to be you?
Who am I now? I'm Karina Lupian. I now have a master's in social work. I also have my associate clinical licensure, temporary licensure. I'm going to go towards being a clinician. I originally got to this point after doing my BSW and my MSW through school. What else?
Okay, well, that's a wonderful start. That's pretty much what I asked you, right? Who are you right now? So can we jump back just a little bit now?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your early life?
Yeah, so early on, I came from, I lived in a home with just my mom who raised us. It was me and my brother living with my grandma, and my cousins were there at the house all day. You hear that a lot in a lot of typical Mexican households. You know, the family kind of stays together.
Sure.
As we got a little older, my mom ended up moving out. My mom was a nurse who ended up becoming disabled, and she ended up getting into addiction. So early on, I kind of allowed myself to be very independent, and I think that was maybe my first experience as a social worker, you know. But being a social worker for myself, I learned, you know, what resources there was at school and what I needed to do as a student, and it kind of went through there. And then I grew up a little bit, moved down to the Imperial Valley, where I ended up becoming a teen mom at 17. Then at 2 years old, so I had my own things going on as a teen mom, and then my son, when he became 2, he got diagnosed with autism. So then that journey began, and then I did school. I was with my child. I learned a lot of different things with the autism community. I think as a young parent, you don't know what it is to be a parent, so you're kind of navigating that. And then they tell you, okay, well, your son's autistic. So then you're like, okay, what can I learn about this? How is it that he learns? What milestones does he need to meet? And you kind of navigate your life in that aspect. So my focus went towards that. And then once he became, I want to say once he was in kindergarten, things slowed down. He was growing, he was thriving in every milestone known to mankind. He already was well established in therapies and school and all the supports that we needed for him, that I allowed myself to go back to school. And, you know, then began my journey as a social worker and student.
Can I just jump in there a second, Karina? That was about the time when I met you for the first time, and you had this sweet, sweet, sweet son. And I remember talking with you, and you were talking about his needs and how much you were doing and what was going on. And I remember thinking, this is an amazing woman. This is such a woman. You knew so much, and you had everything down, and you were doing absolutely everything. You know, if there's a right or wrong, I don't like those words, but you were doing everything possible for him, and he was just doing so well.
Yeah.
And I remember meeting you at that time, and I think we may have even had a conversation about the kind of social worker you would make and how wonderful you would be. So thanks for letting me just put that in there.
Oh, thank you.
And jump in. So I have a question. When did that first inkling of college, where in your life journey so far up to where did that come into play?
So my family, I am a first generational student.
All right. Me too.
I'm the first generation to go to college and everything. And you always hear about these things, right? You hear about people going to college and how big it is. And you don't know kind of how you're going to get there, but you have goals in your life that you're like, you know what, I want to be there. And once I became a mom, that fire got lit into me, as in, what next do I want to do for my life, but also for my child's life. And school kind of was the thing that I was motivated to want to do. So my first attempt to go to college, I went into the nursing field. And I was already on my last class, about to enter into the nursing field, when I was just so focused on my son and everything that had to do with the autism community and the developmental aspect. And I thought about all the people in my life who kind of helped me get to be where I was at as a student, as a mom, as a person. And at that time, nursing no longer fulfilled me.
Wow.
And so I had to really step back and think, okay, what is it that I want to do that I think is going to fulfill me for the rest of my life? I looked into my options and I was like, social work really stood out for me, because I knew that in every part in my life, there was somebody there able to guide me, and that really helped me when I didn't have a lot of the support. I had those people there to kind of guide me and give me that support. And I wanted to do that for somebody other than my son. For other people,
So you had all but finished the nursing program, and then you turned over and switched to the social work program. I just have to know, all that information that you learned as a nurse, how does that benefit you as a social worker too?
As weird as it sounds, it works hand in hand.
That's what I wondered. Yeah,
as weird as it sounds. You go into nursing and you learn a lot of technical things about the body, but you also learn about patient care. You also learn about advocacy for your patients. You learn about what it is that some patients don't understand. You learn about end of life. You learn about just all these things in the medical field that you're like, wait a minute. You work hand in hand at times with social workers to make sure that your guys' client is able to have a well-resourced life, a well-resourced lifestyle, or with whatever hardship they're going through. And this can happen from a diagnosis, to an emergency or a trauma. And I got to see how hand in hand that really, really went.
Absolutely. So now I just have to know, when did the MSW appear in your horizon? When did you know that bachelor's wasn't enough, but by golly, you were going for that master's?
In my bachelor's program, I got to really see the different fields of social work that came into play, and how much you could really do in the social work field.
Was that a surprise?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think when you think of social work, at least in my life, early on, I thought, oh, well, they're just case managers, or they just handle paperwork. But then when you start getting into the technical part of it and your education, you're like, wait a minute, there's so much more to that. And I wanted to do something with my BSW, but then I realized that with my MSW, I was able to do something that we call clinical work and be a clinician of my own. And that just seemed where my heart was, and to give that one-on-one or that family group setting to make sure that a child or a person was able to get that type of connection with somebody. I wanted to do that, and that's where my MSW came into play, and the clinical work came into play with the BSW.
And just watching you and talking to you, it sounds like it works. It sounds like it's a natural fit. It certainly seems to go together beautifully. That's what I would think. But I do have another question. What were some things that happened that you didn't expect to happen on this whole journey of starting back in community college and then going the whole way through to that master's?
There's a lot of things. Yeah, there's a lot of things that come into mind. I think in life we have a plan, which we want to follow. In a perfect life, maybe that would happen, but life happens. Relationships happen, breakups happen, children happen. School, you hit school hurdles, where there's times where, for example, I remember starting out in writing. I used to think I was such a great writer because I could say these elaborate stories, but then when I got down to the paperwork, and getting down to specific things that I needed to do, I had a real trouble doing that. And so I learned different ways of how to really manage those things and to grow. And to grow with whatever it was that was happening in my life, whether it was school, my education, my my home life. I mean, just so many things. But yeah.
Wow. So you probably answered this, but I want our listeners and our watchers to hear it directly from you in the form of a question. What was your motivation? What put you on that first path, and did that motivation change as you were going down that road on that journey? I'm really curious to know that, and I think our listeners will want to know too.
Absolutely. My motivation started out with my son. My son, being a mom, my main motivation, I feel like my main character in that moment was to want to be and do something for him. Sure. So that was my main motivation, but along the time, it shifted. It shifted, and he no longer became just my motivation. I also had motivation for something I wanted to do for me. And I think that's really important, because a lot of times as parents, or even in your own lives, you forget about things that you want to do and things that you want to accomplish because you're so stuck in these roles. And I really began to learn how exactly I was going to do that. So it didn't mean I had to not be a mom or not be a good mom or not be an involved mom. No, I was allowed to do that, but I was also allowed to do something that motivated me, and I was able to accomplish dreams and things that I wanted to do, so that later on I could say, hey, I was able to do this. Let's figure out what is it that you want to do. Let's try to make this work. And it did. It worked for me.
Wow, those are very big words, and I'm so happy to hear you say that, because I don't think I'm putting the cart before the horse here when I say that an awful lot of people, and maybe even an awful lot of women in particular, are doing all their stuff for everybody else, and then they get to the place where they say, and now I'm too old. And I think for you to say, it's okay, it's really good, and look what happens. Look what happens. Wow. So what are your future thoughts and plans as you're now at this wonderful place?
I want to say I don't know, because
it's a journey, right?
It's such a journey. I think life navigates you in so many different ways and just moves you in so many different ways. As of right now, I know that my roles as a parent are going to come into place, but my roles also in the field now, that I'm starting, more clinical work, more therapy, more one-on-one, that's going to come into play. And the organization as well comes in, the foundation comes into play, where I want to get the word out and to let other people know that it's absolutely possible, even when you kind of don't feel like it is, or even when you don't know where it's going to start or how you're going to make it work. It could happen. Like, you can make it work.
Well, can I ask you about that? You're vice president of the Master's Journey Foundation, and I'm curious, what brought you into it? What made you say, this is work I do want to do?
What brought me into the foundation was the fact that I wanted other people to know that it is absolutely okay and it's possible to get into a field that you do have some type of support. Some people don't come from families that have support, and some people come from generations that don't know that they can go to school or that know that it's possible. And I want them to know that through the foundation, we want to let people know that we're everyday people just like them, and that we've, have our stories to tell. But at the same time, we want them to know that we want to create something that gives them that type of support to continue moving forward and building more of the social work field and just more people to help everybody out.
What a wonderful, wonderful goal. What a wonderful goal. Before I let you go, though, back to your busy life, I do want to know, is there anything that I didn't ask that you want to share and tell? Because sometimes on this side of the table, I don't know everything that you want to share with us. What have I missed?
Looking back in life, there's a lot of things that as people don't know that we can do. And I want people to know that regardless of where you come from, regardless of the things that may put you down, regardless of failing a couple times, we can figure this out. We can do it. There are resources out there for you. It might be hard to find them, but they're there. There's things that are there. Besides that, I think we hit a lot of the points of who I am, what made me me, and I just want people to tune in to kind of see the other stories that come into play, and hopefully they can resonate with somebody, and knowing that they're meant to be exactly where they're at, and that they can do anything that they want to do.
Wow, what a beautiful message and what great words.
Thank you.
You're where you're supposed to be, right, is what you're saying to
Yeah.
people. That's wonderful. Again, I want to thank you, Karina Lupian, Vice President of A Master's Journey Foundation, and coming to speak to us today. Thank you so much for your time and for being here. It is a pleasure. It is a true pleasure. And I'm Dr. Ruth Whistler, faculty, social work faculty for NAU, also a bit for ASU, and also for AWC. Any questions you have from this podcast or any others about how do you become a social worker, just more information about what the heck we do out there in the world, don't hesitate to get in touch with us. We are all here to help you, answer questions with you, get you, how do I get onto that campus, or how do I get through all those FAFSA forms and all of those nightmares. We're here to help, and it's been really wonderful talking with you. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you for the next episode. Vaya con Dios.